Welcome to Your Rally Point podcast. Organizations need a reason to exist, and people need a reason to care. But none of it matters if you can't connect the two. This podcast is where nonprofits, advocacy groups, and mission-driven organizations discover their rallying point. It is your go-to resource for mobilizing support, building authentic connections, and driving real results. So grab your coffee, get comfortable, and let's rally together to create the impact you're meant to make. This is Your Rally Point podcast, brought to you by rallycorp.com.
Hey, James here, back with Your Rally Point podcast. Hey, Jack, how are you?
Fantastic.
That is fantastic. I like to hear it. Well, hey, today's episode, we're going to talk about the types of text messages nonprofits can send. A lot of times when we think about text messaging or mobile, we think like solicitation, right? And I don't know about you, Jack, but did you know that not all text messages are created equal?
That's correct. It's as varied as the text we get every day.
That's right. And I love, sometimes you say, you know what a good text message feels like. You get them all the time.
Yeah, I say it all. Yeah. That is what I tell clients all the time.
Yeah. Clients sometimes will say, well, I don't know what the text, well, you know what a good text message sounds like or feels like because you get them, right? And you also know what the bad ones feel like. So we're going to talk about the 4 types of text messages, when and how you should use them. And then I want to remind our listeners that if they are customers of Rally, there's actually a resource in the playbook that breaks this down in a lot of detail. And then I think we've got 200-300 templates that are written by human, actually, Jack, not AI. We can write them by AI if you want, but we hired a consultant to write them. So we think they're a little bit better.
You bet.
And they're categorized by these 4. So we'll talk a bit about that. So let's get started. Before we do, Jack, why don't you catch us up a bit on your week? Tell me a little bit about kind of what you're excited about this week, and let's share with the audience. Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot going on, right? For all of us here at Rally, a couple of great things here. I got an opportunity to talk to a nonprofit. I won't say their name because I don't have their approval. They provide internet services, laptops, and kind of the support and training for areas of the country that are essentially unserved, inner city folks who are economically challenged and they just don't have the money for $1,000 laptop, or $185, Xfinity service, right? And it was a great reminder to me that when we deal a lot with homeless clients and food banks and other kind of more traditional nonprofits, but it was really encouraging because for a lot of us, the internet wins for us every day. We almost take it for granted. We wake up, we've got our streaming Netflix and everything else. And there is definitely an underserved population that deserves to have that too, that deserves to have internet service for their schooling and those kinds of things. And so I ended the week, that was a call I had earlier today. And I think that was uplifting for me that we just take so much for granted that, our Wi-Fi is down, boy, that's so disrupting for us, right?
No kidding.
But there are communities out there where there's not even a computer in the house and they struggle to make it to the library, for example.
That's amazing.
Right? Or the kids are trying to do their homework and they have no computer.
Yeah.
So I think that was a good resetting moment for me and the types of clients that we work with. So I would say that was kind of a highlight of my week of something that we, clients that we speak of. It was definitely a different take, and I'm really looking forward to helping them. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. I love to hear that. And, it's a good reminder for me and for those that are listening that so much of what we do, we take for granted. It could be our mobility. It could be our opportunity and access to education. It could be computers. That's incredible. That's amazing. So you feel like you'll be able to help them?
Yeah. They've tried, using texting services in the past through their email provider. And I mean, those systems might work for a company selling shoes or something, but they don't necessarily work right for nonprofit. I mean, that's why we're talking here, is that it requires, some special handling.
It's amazing. Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah. Well, let's take good care of them. I think that, there's so much that they have to do day in and day out to keep the mission in front of people, to connect with people in the moment, to rally support, if you would. And there's, there are a lot of concerns right now that grant money might dry up, that government funding might dry up. So
Yep.
really more and more organizations will need to become self-sufficient and reach the masses and do that in a human-centered way, right?
Yeah.
So the more, the more we can help them take off their plate, I think the better, right?
Yeah. And they were reflecting that nervousness
I bet.
about now they don't get a lot of like government assistance. That's one of their struggles
Yeah.
because they're just not that visible, right? It's not a need that's easily recognized by people.
Sure.
But yeah, I think I've heard that this week too. So
Yep. Well, that's amazing. Well, let's keep them in our thoughts and prayers, and anything we can do, let's do that. Now let's talk about the different types of text messaging, and we can take this particular use case, or I have another customer I was talking to this morning that was sending a big campaign and giving some feedback on their messaging. So let's talk about the 4 kinds of text messages, Jack. And there might be a fifth. We can talk about some other options, but I find that there's at least 4 when I look at the messages we've sent on our platform. And those that are listening, one of the benefits of working exclusively with nonprofits is when you're sending 20 million messages, as our goal, we're getting really a lot of clarity in what's working and what's not, right? Across all different types, from performing arts to educational, to healthcare, to organizations like what you mentioned earlier. We're getting a lot of clarity into what works and what doesn't across the social sector, in a broader perspective. So this information we're sharing today really comes from analyzing countless messages across hundreds of customers and, approaching probably millions of clicks at this point, don't you think?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So,
I mean, the data, I mean, it's not anecdotal. I mean, when we do this and we do this day in and day out, we tend to know what types of messaging work the best, and then the voice of that message, or the tone of that message.
Yeah, the feel.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep. So let's dive in a bit. And I have a resource up on my LinkedIn I just put up on. I think there might be also at rallycorp.com/blog. I think you can find it there as well. Maybe even our YouTube channel. But if anybody emails in or texts coach to 24365, just reply to the next message and we'll get that out to you. But we have a graphic that we put together that's really kind of an X and Y axis, if you would, or a grid where we break these down. But I typically plot message types, Jack, across the impact or the results against time, right? Because there are kinds of messages we can send out today that we know are get a lot of response today, but may not get a lot of response from the same group, 6 weeks from now, if that's all you do. So we talk a little bit about like the impact over time. So let's start first off, Jack, with one of the most common that people think about when they think about text messaging, and that's solicitation. That's when you ask for something. You're asking for money, right? And we've seen hundreds of thousands of dollars raised at a time with a solicitation. So it is effective. It does work. But if all you do is ask for money, what do you think will happen?
You'll get frustrated people, and and it's like that neighbor that always comes over to borrow your tools.
Yeah, I know that guy.
I mean, if that's all they're doing, then them as solely that, that character, right?
Yeah, and truthfully, Jack, one of the reasons I harp on this topic so much, and track it back to the beginning of our company where we talk about this, but from day one, some of the resistance we get, because often what will happen for us is that there's a champion or an internal stakeholder who's responsible for the event, for a certain amount of raise or communications, marketing, whatever their role is, but they're tasked with getting the job done. And sometimes these folks are of maybe a younger generation. They're a little bit more tech savvy. They've been doing these types of things, so they're very much aware of their own personal use of text messaging, right? So they'll come along and they'll fill out a form on our website and say, hey, we're curious, it's something I want to do. And then at some point they hit a roadblock internally. It could be a board member, could be somebody further up in leadership, but someone's like, man, I don't know what we should text our donors. Right. And typically that when they say that, what I have found is that they're concerned about texting their donors because they think about the types of text messages they've gotten that feel like it's out of the blue. There's no relational equity. It's not conversational. It feels almost like a violation of my privacy, right?
Sure.
And I have to go to work extra time, overtime sometimes to convince these organizations that, hey, we're not talking about out of the blue text messages to a cold list or to people who haven't already agreed to it, right? In fact, sometimes we're talking about just saying thank you, right?
Yeah.
That's it. Just say thanks.
Yeah.
And that might be enough, right? So beyond solicitation, what are some other types of messages that you've seen? I know we talked about like when someone donates,
Mhm.
or signs up for an event or something. But what are some of the other types of the messages that you thought about?
Well, I mean, you mentioned like the simple things like event reminders. I mean, those are very, I guess those are very, tactical. Um, but I think the one thing that's really missed, especially with our clients that require a huge amount of people to support them, right? So volunteers. Um, it's it's funny. I'll bring it up. Like, we work with some big food banks, and there's a lot of larger organizations out there. Um, and it's amazing how they tell us they struggle to get volunteers.
Yep.
And I'm like, well, you're texting in before they're required. You're checking in with them like, hey, you're coming in Saturday, right?
Yeah.
You're doing that via text, or are you just sending that to their old email address?
Yeah. How you
And
getting a hold of them? But yeah.
it is so simple. Like, they're like, oh yeah, we could actually have a text group for volunteers. I mean, sure, you could. And then people would show up actually to help you. And and so it sounds so simple, but when you break it down, typically people will be like, we use text just for fundraising. But I'm like, yeah, you have I think in a lot of the information that I see for clients, they'll talk about how many volunteers they have per year. It's thousands. It's thousands sometimes.
Yeah. I know.
And
Right.
and why wouldn't you have a text group for them? Looking for 18 volunteers on Saturday for the bike-a-thon. Done.
Yeah.
Yeah, wouldn't it be great to have too many volunteers actually show up? We love that, right?
Yeah.
And so I love the kind of what I call, like, there's donor messaging, and then there's what I call internal messaging, right? Which is volunteers and staff and rallying the troops, and things get hard sometimes.
Yeah.
And so I like the volunteer, rallying the people that are helping you help others, right? And oftentimes that's missed.
Yeah.
Oftentimes that's missed. So I like that kind of category of volunteers and rallying the people that are fighting for you every day.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's funny you mentioned the volunteers. With my nonprofit that I work with personally, we have a lot of volunteers. I mean, it takes hundreds of individuals to power our thing, right? So I was talking with the executive director over coffee recently, and I'm like, what's the biggest challenge that we're dealing with right now? And she said, it's really unloading the truck. I'm like, okay, please explain. She's like, I can get volunteers to an event, right? Because the event's every Tuesday and, Thursday night. So that's pretty regular, right? People know when then they sign up weeks in advance, right? But every now and then, like the other day, we got this huge donation from a local grocery store that's dropping off a bunch of pallets. And she really needed to quickly get a couple of strong able bodies to unload the truck, right? Otherwise, it's going to be her and the two or three folks that are in the office, but one of them was out sick. And, so she's literally calling people on the board saying, hey, you got a quick minute to swing by and help me unload this truck. It's on its way. Like, it's urgent, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, like, how do you, in the moment, activating people quickly, or having a group of folks that have agreed, hey, you know what, I'll join the quick alert team, right? I'll take
Sure.
February and March. So for the next 2 months, if you got an urgent thing, and then throw it out there, and we'll jump in. So, we're talking the regular volunteer engagement, but even if you have like I wouldn't call it a crisis, but a quick, like,
Yeah, I need a
OMG,
team of people.
I need somebody now, right?
And I think that's, I mean, we won't dive deeper into this, but, running these organizations is it's a lot of responsibility put on just a few people.
Yep.
And when someone shows up for you, that guy that says, I'll help you unload the truck,
Yep.
it is one of those things that is so uplifting for you. And it's so meaningful for staff that are constantly burdened for staying late and unloading the truck with just the same three people.
Yep.
Right. I ran a youth organization for 13 years, and it was the same five people. And it was like pulling teeth to get people. Now, I never use texting. I wish I did, but
Yeah.
yeah, it was always, those people, and it was just like trying to keep those people from burning out because they were just so critical, right?
Yeah.
So something just as simple as like, let's expand our network and the ask of our volunteers. And it seems so simple, right? But
Mhm.
it can make such a change for the people that are working so hard and are just feeling burned out, right?
That's
So
right.
that
Yeah.
volunteer messaging, engaging people um, personally because they're volunteering for you,
Yeah.
right? I mean, that's personal, right? So of course you want to send them a text. Way better than sending them an email that they won't get in the next hour. And
Mhm.
you need people in an hour, but come on,
Yeah. We need them now. Yeah. That
we
truck's
need them
on its
now.
way. That's
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
Full
So we've
semi
seen,
truck.
yeah, exactly. So we've seen informational text messages. We've, so let me just break down the 4 types. I'll just say them and then we can talk through them.
Sure.
But we've talked about solicitation. We've kind of hit a little bit on informational, right? We have some information about an upcoming event. You registered for this event in 2 weeks. Don't forget. And then the day of, right now in San Diego, it's raining. So we've got some text messages going out for a local event that was planned for this weekend. They're making some shifts, making some changes to
Sure.
make sure that people are aware that, hey, the event is still on, but you're going to need to bring an umbrella, right? So informational text messages tend to have a longer lifespan. I mean, people tend to not opt out of informational messages. They're informative by their nature. So if they're relevant and helpful. And then we've got transactional messages. And I think this is probably one of the largest underlooked areas in nonprofits, in my opinion. And that is where there's things that happen on your website or through engaging with your cause all the time. And if you could just trigger a text message, you have a better chance of alerting somebody to bring them back. So the way we do this, Jack, when we run our twice annual leadership summits, we will ping everybody. Of course, when they register with the information that they need in their inbox, then, right, we send an email and a short text message. The text message just contains kind of what they need on their phone. And in our case, it's a map to a venue because that's where they're going to want it when they're driving. It's not on their laptop, but on their computer or their phone, rather. And then the day of the event, I send out a podcast episode or an audio, something they can listen to. Typically a podcast because they're free, but typically a resource that we invite people to listen to on their way up to prepare for the event, so that it's a good use of our conversation when they're there. It kind of puts them in the mindset, right? So transactional, informational, and then of course our favorite, Jack, is conversational.
That's right.
And when people hear that, they think we're saying, hey, you need to have a conversation with 1,000 people at a time. Or like in some of the campaign we sent out this morning that was conversational went out to about 34,000 people. So if you imagine having a back-to-back chat with 34,000 people, that sounds like a lot of work, right?
Yeah. I mean, that the term gets confused, right? Because in our industry, and if you're looking at texting services, you'll see the word conversational all the time.
You're like, what?
Right. And that does refer to the technical aspect of like, I'm going to have this person ask where to park and I'm going to communicate, reply back one-to-one, which we do have. But conversational in the different context that we're talking about is, and I'll go say it again. You know what a good text looks like.
Yeah.
And that text from a friend who cares, that's what we're talking about as far as conversational.
Yeah.
How are you feeling today?
That's right. Yeah.
That makes you feel good. Or hi, Jane, dot. Happy Friday. I hope you're feeling awesome. I found something that you might like.
Yeah.
And here's a link to like a feel good message or something like that. People send
That's
that
right.
stuff all the time.
Yeah.
That's what we're talking about.
Exactly. And there's a couple of different ways that we've seen this work. So first off, personifying the message sender so that it's coming from an individual. It can be the organization, of course, but in as much as possible, if we can personify that, so that it feels like it's coming from a person to a person. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, humanizing the message itself to include someone's name. Like, hi, Jack. When you're looking at your text message and you got that decision to quickly swipe to clear it, or to click into it and read it, right? One of the things that you're looking for is it relevant? So if it says your name, it's gonna cause you just a split second to read it, right? Because it's personal at that point. So hi James is better than hi friend, right? And this is John, or this is Alex, or this is Sally is better than launch it into an ask, right?
Yeah.
Incorporating emojis, right? And I did actually on LinkedIn, I talked about Unicode versus non, right? Some of the different ways to send messages that can shorten the length of a message. So The right kind of emoji, of course, is going to be more universal than the wrong kind of emoji. And it sounds a little confusing, but when you're using with a platform that kind of pre-builds your templates for you or gives you the drop down to select from, we can obviously do the heavy lifting. But conversational is personified sender, potentially, right? Personalized recipient for sure. And then may even ask a question like yes, no, maybe so, thumbs up, thumbs down, whatever, right? But what you're looking to do, a measurement of success for conversational, is the engagement on that message. How many people reply or click the link or do something, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And how fast they might do it too.
And how fast they might do it. So the message that went out this morning went 34,000, whatever it was, people. And it ended with a question, but then they set up AI workflows so that if someone replied yes, they got an automatic response, and no, they got a different response. And that left the inbox people monitoring the inbox only having to deal with, I don't know, 0.02% of the messages didn't get routed properly.
Sure.
And then they could do the big bucket reviews of saying, hey, let's click on everybody who said yes. Let's aggregate those responses, and then let's respond to those people a certain way. And anybody who said no, respond to them a different way. And then the ones that got lost in the middle, maybe hand touch those. But I saw the campaign, I think it was like 8 people. So it wasn't that hard, right? So conversational by its tone really, I think, personifies the organization and the sender, but certainly makes the recipient feel like it's coming from someone, not from, some robot. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, we talk about, if you got a message, a group message from from like a guy that went out to 10 other people saying, I need you guys to help me move tomorrow.
Yeah.
And you haven't talked to them in 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't really a personal message to you. It was just like, I'm going to put everybody on a group message and be ultra impersonal about it.
Yep.
I mean,
Yep.
it doesn't work out.
Mm-hmm.
So I would just say, when we talk to clients, like, why wouldn't you do that?
Yeah.
I mean, you're saving the eyesight of children around the world.
That's right.
It's so heartfelt. And this person has been a great donor for you in the past.
That's right.
So we're going to do this the right way. And,
absolutely.
And because you wouldn't, I mean, it's like, you wouldn't do that as human beings just wouldn't do that. They wouldn't, you got to make it personal, I guess. And I always say, what you might send a friend is probably what you want to put together in a communication for a nonprofit. Yeah. It's personal, right?
And look, Jack, when we sent that message out to unload the truck, here's what I learned, and I learned this the hard way. So I'm hoping the listeners will, maybe save themselves some trouble. But when I sent out a message to 25, 30 people that said, hey, we have a truck arriving, anybody able to help? I got, maybe 2 responses, right? Very little response. But when I sent out the message to 10 people and I said, hey, Jack, do you have a quick minute to chat? Or, hey, Jack, you got plans this afternoon? So winky face, anything like that was more one-to-one, not one-to-group, right? It felt like it came from me to you. And it's a simple ask like, hey, Jack, I bet you're not doing anything this afternoon. Got a quick minute to chat? And when they reply, sure, you're like, dude, I've got this truck I got to unload, right? Guess how many? We had like 5 volunteers. Half the people responded affirmative. And then 2 of the 5 that didn't responded, man, I just saw this. I'm sorry. I can call now, right? Or
sure.
One of them's like, I got COVID. I'm not coming out of the house. So that's fine. But at the end of the day, it's about making the messages very direct and starting it out in more of a feel. So when I'm texting, even my mid-level donors, so the larger donors that I connect with a couple times a year just to keep the relational equity high, I will text them and say, hi, Amy, do you got a quick minute to chat? So the more we can make the conversation feel personal and natural, the better.
Yeah.
That's the point.
That's actually a really great, those are really great examples, actually. I mean, it's, you're pulling people in, and you're not doing it in some, it's not bad way.
Yeah.
I mean, you're literally helping people who are in need. And so you need help. So it's not, some people feel like, I think sometimes there's a concept of like we can't, within nonprofits, like they don't want to offend people, but hey, you're helping starving people.
Yeah.
You're packing backpacks for kids who have no food for the weekend.
Yeah.
So it is personal and it's okay.
Yeah.
And people want to help you.
Yeah.
With all this kind of vim and vitriol that's going on right now,
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the day, like humans want to help other humans, and we're compassionate overall.
Yeah. 100%.
And so,
Yeah.
I think that when you use a messaging tool like texting, which is in the here and the now, it's a message for the moment. It's the message for right now. I need help unloading the truck.
Yeah, that's right.
And it's a cause that it's not, you're not selling, a consumer product to somebody. This is all turned in on what we do as humans to help each other.
Yep.
So sending a message like that is like, hey, what are you doing this afternoon? Totally fine. Like, I think there's some trepidation that nonprofits have, that they go that extra step of being like super personal and it's creepy or something.
That's right.
It's what you're doing. It's.
Yeah, and listen, honor the stop. If someone says stop, and if they're not interested, then they'll just reply stop, or they'll take themselves off the list. I mean, they're in control, right?
Yeah. 100%.
Well, you honor that, but I'm not going to make a decision for a volunteer or donor. I'm going to let them decide. I'm just going to put myself out there, and I remind our volunteers and our donors all the time. We're really, we're providing an opportunity for them as well. All right, like you said, people are generally, have compassion for others. We want to be human. I'm helping. My path to philanthropy is my path to help you realize your full humanity and be fully open to receive love, and love comes to us to go through us, right? So yes, we're helping the folks with the computers and the backpacks, absolutely. But really, the way I see it, my service and enabling people to serve through our organization is really more for them than it is the people that we're helping.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it feels good.
Yeah. I have to remind our volunteers and our folks all the time, like, because we work with a lot of the, homeless and unsheltered. And I'm like, look, truth is their balance sheet probably looks better than yours personally. Like, they're probably at zero and you're at negative. If you got credit card debt, car payment, and a house payment, you might have more stuff, but you're probably in more debt. So don't look down on them. They might be enlightened. They might be the smarter people here, right? Their balance sheet's at zero. Yours is at negative, right? Think about it.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
So we're not taking pity on anybody, but what we are doing is we're enabling that. You have capacity to finance, and they may not. You have an address, and they don't. You have resources, and they don't. So share the wealth, share the debt. Don't just have that car payment to have it. Use it for good, right?
Yeah, and we're a gateway to enable that to happen.
100%.
And one of the things I would lament was, when people would be like this. They'd be like, Jack, I wish I knew you needed help.
Yeah.
I wish you would have said something. And I'm like, yeah, I sent you an email 3 times over the last 11 days. You didn't get it? And they're like, dude, text me next time. I mean, and that's how the conversation goes, right?
It is. Yeah.
And if you talk about even the nonprofits, how many times have their volunteer coordinators or whoever heard that from their volunteers? I wish I knew.
That's right.
I wish I would have loved to help. I had the time.
Yeah.
And now that volunteer feels bad in their heart because they could have helped.
Yeah.
And all it was your choice of your form of communication.
Yeah, that's right.
That's it.
Well, your rally point is about meeting people where they are, right, and getting and keeping attention. So I've got they can't see it now because it's up on the top shelf behind me, but I keep a megaphone up there when I do my coaching with the kids, soccer teams and stuff. I use that megaphone, but I like to think about, like, I can walk out my front door with that megaphone and yell into it just randomly on the street that I have a need. And, I might get one or two, I might get a neighbor or two to come out given we're at, this area. But fact of the matter is, I'm not going to necessarily connect with the right people, right? Or I'm not going to connect with the masses. I'm going to create opportunistically with anybody that can hear me. So using a tool that can reach the masses and activate them in a moment is really what we're talking about, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But beyond just the medium or the method of like texting, we're talking about really just allowing people an opportunity to opt in or out and to have an opportunity to serve, right?
Yep.
So I am constantly recruiting young, individuals that have a stronger back than mine to come unload trucks. And I'll say, look, show up from time to time for sure. We need you from time to time. But if you could just be available for these 2 months a year, if we have an urgent need, we'll let you know. Right.
Yeah.
So there you go, Jack. I appreciate that. Any closing thoughts or anything you want to leave our audience with today as we think about reaching people in the moment?
I just, I always reiterate, we use texting every hour.
That's right.
And so done well and respectfully with the tools that we have, we can enable that. We're excited to enable that to happen for great nonprofits.
I love it. Well, Jack, the grace, love, resources, everything come to us to go through us, right?
That's right.
My dad used to tell me he never saw a U-Haul behind a hearse. So
That's right.
you can't take it with you. And it's really of only good. 100 years from now, nothing will matter except for the love and the lives that you've touched, right?
Oh, yeah.
For generational. So I love that we're able to meet people in the moment, activate and rally them for cause. I would encourage people to think about doing that across multiple channels, not just text messaging, but email, leverage video, tell good stories, but meet people in the moment and then activate them. So again, 4 types of text messages: transactional, informational, conversational is the golden goose. And then obviously solicitation, right? Mm-hmm. About 3 to 1. So for every 2 or 3 messages we send, we do make an ask for sure.
You bet.
So, all right, Jack. Well, hey, thanks for your time, and we will see you next week. What's on the docket for next week? Let me look here at our little cheat sheet. Best practices for writing text messages.
Mm-hmm.
And voicemails. I think we're going to do a little bit of voicemail scripts as well.
Sure. Looking forward to that discussion.
Awesome. All right, good. All right, your Rally Boy Podcast with Jack and James. We'll catch you next week. Oh, text coach to 24365. Text coach to 24365 if you want to join our weekly coaching tips and hotline. And then, of course, you have questions, reply there, and we will address them in videos throughout the week. All right, everybody. Catch you next time.
Okay.
Bye-bye.